Tell the Truth Film of the Week for that Christmas Day game versus the Steelers. Trent McDuffie, have yourself a day, kid.
All pro Trent, say it right.
All pro Trent McDuffie, well earned. Trent McDuffie has been, for my money, one of the three best corners in the National Football League this year, and he's earned it. And it's not because he's been in the slots, because he's been able to go outside and match up with guys on a consistent basis. So I thought the Steelers game was a really good encapsulation of his skill set in general, and then also some ways in that which he's kind of grown from that perspective. And I do want to start kind of with the one play that he gave up throughout the entirety of the day. And this was early on, a back shoulder kind of throw down the sideline to George Pickens as well. And this is where, hey, this is what George Pickens and Russell Wilson end up doing from this perspective. And George Pickens is able to create that little late separation, be able to catch that, and Russell Wilson ends up putting it on him. But the thing I wanted to highlight here, McDuffie does do a solid job at getting his head around. But the issue is there's too much space for Russell Wilson to put this ball into towards the sideline. And that space created is what ends up being Trent McDuffie from that perspective. And this is the thing about being on the outside. And Trent McDuffie, because he's shorter and also has a little bit shorter arms, he has to win early on. And then also because of his mentality and the way that he plays with, his ability to shrink that space is ultimately what's going to allow him to be successful versus those bigger wide receivers. Go ahead. You were going to say something, DJ?
No, I was just saying it sometimes it comes down to a point where it's good defense, which is better offense. Pickens, I think on this, Russell Wilson in his career has always thrown an amazing deep ball and moon ball, as we all call it, or whatever. But he's been very effective with that. But the ability of George Pickens, you see the talent that he possesses in this one play with the late hands. Which a lot of receivers don't, especially early on in their careers, and don't really have developed to this point in their games. And so I just think that's ultimately what this is. No, not really a bad rep by Trent McDuffie, just better offense.
Just a good catch, bro.
You just got to chalk this one up.
Really good throw in a right. Yeah.
By a receiver that's really good at contested catches. So
is his chief skill in national football, catch those contested catches, and it's the thing that he gets worried about because with go to whether it is Mike
DG, get him.
Yeah, you kind of lagging, Mac.
D-Mac, you lagging.
Go get him back.
DG, go get him.
It's probably gonna pop him out here. But yeah, man, this is just the play that
that's
speaks
just Pickens being Pickens, man.
Yeah, speaks to his talent and where he's at. I think the mental part of the game isn't fully there for him yet. The whole, trying to put that together. You back, Matt? You were lagging a little bit.
You was lagging.
So can you guys see?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You back by now?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
hopefully it stays that way. Go ahead.
It has you with that Steelers Wi-Fi for a minute.
Pickens showing his talent and where he can be if he ends up putting it all together at one point. So that's all.
Great coverage, great throw, great catch.
CJ, really quickly, explain the concept of late hands for people if they don't understand what that is. Because
no, as a DB, and a lot of our fans probably get upset coming into this year. They always say, "Well, how come DBs always, especially if some of ours, would never turn their head around?" Because obviously receivers don't give tails. And the tail is basically if I'm in phase and we're running down the field like George Pickens is here, I don't want to look for the ball too early or show my hands to make the DB think, oh, the ball is here now. So as a receiver, you're taught to have late hands. So you wait for the last possible second for the ball just to get to you. Then you put your hands up and make a play on the ball. Because if I do it too early and I'm running like this or I'm looking for the ball too early, the DB can also react to the ball and make a play. So as a receiver, you want to run, keep your head down, have kind of like a peripheral, knowing where the ball is coming. And then once it gets in your general vicinity and it gets close to your head, then you want to make a play on the ball. So don't peek too early because then the DB has a chance to make a play on the ball as well. So the later you look at the ball, the better you have a chance to make the play because the DB is looking at you. He's not looking at the ball. So if you look up, he's going to look up. So the later you look, the later he has time to react to make a play on the ball. So as a receiver, you want to just run to your spot, have a general, like I said, vicinity of where the ball is at, then go make a play. And obviously Pickens is a special talent, one of the best in the league at making contested catches. This is why he was highly commented coming out of Georgia because he's a great player who can make plays on the ball. Yes, he's immature, but a play like this is why you deal with some of the things that you did with Pickens because he's just a special player. So I understand why people were infatuated with him, but Trent McDuffie's in perfect position. So don't blame Trent at all on this play. He's in phase. He's hip to hip. Made a play on the ball. It's just late hands, like D-Mac stated. And Pickens did a great job waiting until the last second to look for the ball. And great throws beat great defense any day, like DG said too. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So thank you for explaining that as well. But I wanted to start out again with the one play that McDuffie did end up giving up kind of throughout this day. But I think it's good context for what the Steelers' offense really is built on and what they want to do, but specifically how Trent McDuffie was able to play throughout this game and really mitigate a lot of those aspects as well. So obviously you see the George Pickens catch from this perspective. We'll get to the next play here, which is being able to learn that lesson. And this is also versus Mike Williams, who lesser receiver than George Pickens, but somebody that has had success versus us in the past, obviously when he's with the Steelers, but a guy in the same mold, a guy that wants to get down the field, down the sideline, and, be physical at the catch point and be able to bring those passes in. Russell Wilson throws it over to him. And I wanted to also include the sideline view for this one too, because again, this is the lesson learned in being able to win effectively from this perspective. The space here is lessened. Trent McDuffie gets his head around earlier, is able to contest this even more. Again, squeezes the sideline, uses it to his advantage as boundary corner should do on a consistent basis, and ultimately pushes Mike Williams out of bounds as he tries to bring this pass in. And he isn't able to haul it in. They had to overturn it specifically and say that he didn't get those 2 feet down. But that is the purpose of what a boundary corner is supposed to do, to be able to take away these things, be able to squeeze that sideline, make it difficult for the quarterback to make those throws, and then get your head around quickly enough to be able to give a real contest. That's what he was able to do here from this play. I didn't know if DG wants to jump in there.
No, I was thinking about all the Steelers fans I had to see this week that were complaining about that player being reviewed and not the Hollywood Brown play being reviewed. But it's of course because y'all don't know the rules. So
you can review theirs, you can't review our DG. You know how that goes.
Yeah. We get all the reviews in the world.
Throw the challenge.
But it would help if your coach would throw the challenge flag. When he needs to.
Look at Tom. Just look at Tom just sitting there. Look, ain't challenging nothing.
This one was underneath. This was within the 2 minutes of the half,
which is the rule. You're not allowed to challenge.
The other one wasn't. And look, this is again.
You can't.
Sorry, guys. This is the difference between championship teams and just teams that make the playoffs. Your attention to detail. We hurried up after the Hollywood Brown play to make sure that
because we knew you can't.
Hey, sorry. Be better.
Know the rules.
The details. Like I said, championship pedigree.
Yes. And so again, this is what you see from that perspective. So learning the lesson from the George Pickens earlier catch, being able to squeeze that sideline and make it difficult. But this is where Trent McDuffie ultimately shines the most, is when, hey, these guys are not trying to get just open down the sideline. He's trying to shake you. Guess who stays in the hip pocket as good or better than anybody else in the National Football League? Mr. Trent McDuffie down at the bottom of the screen with George Pickens. There's no window to get that out route for Russell Wilson to throw this ball.
Locked up.
That is locked up from the second that he got off the line of scrimmage. He had no chance from that perspective as well. And you love to see it. This is what you saw a lot of the day on the outside. Go ahead, DG.
I wonder, I got a feeling at some point in McDuffie's career, like maybe in high school or early on, that he played receiver at some point. Maybe he did. I don't know if that's true or not. But he has – what I love about watching him is that when he's left on the island and it's just him, he doesn't panic ever. I hardly ever, and that's the thing for a lot of corners in the league. Like some corners, they can play coverage and things of that nature, but then they'll get into a compromising position. Yeah, they start panicking or whatever, and then that's when you see the penalties kind of start to fly. I think that's one of the main issues with Josh Williams is that I think sometimes he plays good coverage, but then there are points in times where he panics and and draws a flag or whatever. So
as expected,
it just I've been seeing this kind of throughout McDuffie's career, especially in the film. Like I think one of his best games ever was in the Super Bowl against Debo, and he was pretty much running Debo's routes for him.
And that week 2 game versus Bengals.
And that week 2 game against Jamar Chase. But he's just got a natural ability of knowing what's coming ahead of him, being in that hip pocket like you said, and just staying on top of a route. all the way
And
through.
go back to that speed out that George ran D-Mac. I think this is a great subtle thing that fans probably don't notice. And since we're watching film, it'll probably be a great. Notice how he jammed George directly off the line. So one, it knocks off his timing. Now I can react because now I built myself a cushion. So I get my hands on him first. Now he's just in phase. So he gets on that. He's like phase. So now when he breaks, I break. And I have my cushion now. And there's no room for a DPI or a holding because I built that cushion already. Instead of like ride, you know how most DBs would like ride you and run with them with their hand on their shoulder. He did his work early. Now I can stay in phase. I have my cushion. Now I'm just reacting. I know he can't beat me inside because I've already built that position. So the only thing he can't do is break out. And I have Justin over the top. He knows the coverage. He knows his leverage. And he played his technique early. So now I do all my work out the way. Now I can just make a play on the ball. That's just what an all-pro corner does for sure.
It's one thing to have the skill. It's another thing to have the instincts to go along with it too. And I think he has both.
And then to your point about that patience, it goes into that instinct to just, hey, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to play the route effectively. And to your point, being able to do your work early on is what then plays into, hey, Russell Wilson is in the back of his head. He has that eternal clock. There's an edge rusher that's about to hit Russell Wilson if he holds that ball in any seconds longer as well, with Mike Danick looping in underneath. That is the thing. If you're able to throw off the timing of the route, then you have the ability then to win on a consistent basis. And that's what McDuffie obviously has been very good at throughout the entirety of his career, but then being able to really translate it for some more physical wide receivers on the outside as well. What's up, Chris? Happy New Year to you, Doug.
Good, Chris. Happy New Year, bro.
Yes. So that was, I think that was like a third and long type of play as well. Another example of Trent McDuffie on George Pickens, and you're going to get it right here as well. A little bit of second reaction scramble play that McDuffie ends up playing the short stick route to try and convert on third down, and there's really nothing to throw there. Drew Tranquil also with a little bit of help inside to make sure that he squeezes it, and then plasters George Pickens on any attempt at a scramble route for Russell Wilson, kind of panic throw there with Charles Omenihu getting into his face as well. And, there just wasn't anything open from that one. So, again, the consistent ability to line up one-on-one with George Pickens on a consistent basis and make it incredibly difficult on him really showed throughout the game. And it also continued to, I think, pile up for some frustration both from Russell Wilson and George Pickens as well. And here you're going to see some of the frustration from Russell Wilson. He wants to go to George Pickens here, isolated to the bottom of your screen. And he looks at him and he's like, all right, well, that's locked up. I can't go there. He's like, all right, well, let me look it off. And then eventually he's just going to kind of throw it away because there's nothing else open from that aspect. Again, being able to look one-on-one and shut down that initial route that the guy wants to go to as far as his first read makes it incredibly difficult to go from that point forward.
I get the feeling that Pickens in this game thought that he could beat McDuffie with his strength or just kind of bully McDuffie at the line. And that was not happening at all.
Nope, it's not.
And he's a very strong individual.
He is. And it's one of those things. He doesn't have the longest arms. But again, if your technique and your balance and you're not panicking, you're not grabbing, you're not holding. If all those things are aligned, you can make up for some of those things. And he's not, huge, but he is compact and he's able to be. And you see his strength in other aspects we'll get into a little bit later on. But it certainly manifests in his ability, to press at the line of scrimmage as well. So he shuts down that George Pickens thing, that George Pickens route from that perspective too. And then you're going to see here again one-on-one with George Pickens to that slant fade, or that kind of stick fade, I should say, to the top of the screen here. Again, Russell Wilson. Hey, I want to throw this to George Pickens. Slot fade. He's been really good against this all year. Well, it's not there. Now I got to scramble, and George Karlaftis is hustling around the edge to go and get the sack. A massive sack on second down that puts him back at 3rd and 10. Again, frustrating for Russell Wilson to say, well, my number one wide receiver is getting absolutely locked up. I can't really get anywhere else from that perspective as well as the game goes on. And then the next play coming up here is about the frustration that George Pickens ends up experiencing. To your point, DG, I think that I can win my one-on-one matchups versus this guy. I think I'm going to be able to use my strength to get off the line of scrimmage to do so. Well, over the course of a game, if you keep getting bench pressed at the line of scrimmage, eventually you're kind of sick and tired of doing it. And this is what exactly is going to happen to George Pickens at the top of the screen. He's going to be like, all right, well.
And to Trent's credit, obviously Trent played the technique right, outside leverage, because I know I have inside safety help, so I'm just not going to let him beat me on my outside shoulder. George gave up on the route. That's the main thing that he's upset about. Like, yes, he beat you. You can still keep finding work and trying to run outside to make Justin Reed respect you. Once you've given up on a play, if I'm Justin Reed, I'm like, you're taken care of. Now I can solely focus on this inside threat, which is the tight end. Now I can just focus on that play right there in front of me. So
that's what makes me wonder. Like, and I know this is clearly about Trent McDuffie, but this Pickens,
the infatuation.
It makes me wonder: does Pickens care about football, or does Pickens care about Pickens? Because this is a clear example, especially on this play, that like
that's a selfish play.
You just did not want to do your job. You know, like the ball obviously isn't going to you, so you feel like you don't have to run your route to draw coverage your way, knowing that you're the guy on that team. We're doubling you. You know, so it's like you just give up on your route and you kind of leave your quarterback in a bind, and now he has to try to force a throw and makes a mistake. Like, and I ain't gonna lie, this is probably the easiest interception Justin Reed will ever get in his life.
And that's a credit to Trent. Once Trent does that work early and he notices George isn't moving off 5 yards, he can solely focus on the inside threat, which is really only one player coming towards him, which is Pat Freiermuth here, and you got Drew Tranquil working underneath. So once Trent did his work early, like previously on the other play, he's removed George Pickens from the play. Now there's no threat of him at all. So that play was solely won by Trent and George's effort. But Justin Reed being in the right position to make plays, and for all the flack we give Justin, he's played well the last 2 weeks in coverage. Mainly obviously he's always been a willing tackler and a great tackler for our defense for what he's asked to do inside the box. But making plays in coverage, A, alignment, B, assignment, and C, executing the play. Justin Reed has done that well at the last 2 weeks. He was one of the guys I wanted to highlight today. Obviously, we can't break down everyone. There's only so many players we can talk about. But he's played very well in coverage, specifically the last 8 quarters of football, mainly because he's A, getting lined up, and then B, is just alignment, and he knows where to be. And I think being in his defense 3 years now, he knows this defense better than anyone here next to Spags. Obviously, that's why he loves him in the scenarios. And I know fans give him a hard time, and he makes his mistakes. None of that is invalid. But at times, he makes plays because he knows where to be. And he did that here in the Steelers game.
And I'll say two quick things just to piggyback off of that. This guy here in the slot, Chris Roland Wallace, has gotten more opportunities because of
more snaps. His snaps have run up.
His ability to be able to be more of a actual coverage corner in the slot has helped a lot from that perspective as well. Hasn't put the safeties in as many compromising positions from that standpoint after guard slot wide receivers, which you saw at a consistent basis is an issue. Secondarily, I think he's on the field here. Yes, Mr. Charles Omenihu here at the bottom of the screen. Being able to help the pass rush on a consistent basis makes it easier for everybody on the back end to do their job effectively as well. And those things work in concert to make everything kind of coalesce from that standpoint. You've seen the benefits of that, certainly the last 3 weeks as well. But as CJ said, again, and that's the thing I also wanted to point out, Justin Reed here is shaded to help on George Pickens. He just is. That's why Russell Wilson ends up throwing this ball. In his mind before the snap, Justin Reed is going to be on George Pickens. He expects George Pickens to run this route down the field. Trent McDuffie stops that from happening. He, throughout the entirety of the game, has frustrated George Pickens with his ability to press at the line of scrimmage. And now it has manifested in George Pickens quitting on this route. Russell Wilson making that predetermined throw down the seam, trying to attack two coverage, and Justin Reed making a really good play on the ball to go ahead and make that interception as well. And so that's how Trent McDuffie's work throughout the game can lead to turnovers from that perspective, obviously in coverage. And then you get to this one as well. This is the aspect of his game that I think is still somehow underrated when we talk about this. And we saw it plenty versus the Texans, the physicality that they bring to the table. But they're going to motion Calvin Austin across the formation. He's got to trigger down, and he sees him at the line of scrimmage and shuts him down immediately. And that is the toughness that Trent McDuffie plays even as an undersized corner. And it's awesome to see him play with, and really all the corners play with that level of physicality. But when your number one corner does it, it feels like it brings a little bit extra oomph to it throughout the entirety of your defense as well. So I wanted to highlight that, and give Trent McDuffie that shout out. And then of course, this is the one that he creates on his own. The fumble recovery, again, his ability to come down against a bigger player, strip the ball. And, we saw him his rookie year. He had that punch out versus. Yes. Or no, this was in rookie. His last year. Last year. Not last year. Last year versus the Detroit Lions. We saw the punch out in the opening game, but he's continued to try and add the turnover aspect of it. Obviously, previous 2 games, he got the interceptions. That strip as a consecutive takeaway streak for Trent McDuffie at this point. And you got to just give him a shout out, man. For physicality and now wanting to take the ball away as well is a great growth from his perspective. So to me, you've seen the coverage technique skills since you came in the league, the ability to play with instincts and the mentality to play with instincts on a consistent basis since he came into the league as well. But now you're seeing, yeah, that was crazy. It's a wild truck.
Great.
That was a wild truck. he went back. He staggered after that one.
Look like he might be
but now,
back.
Yeah, it looked like it. But now you're seeing not only those coverage abilities, but now you're seeing them translate to the outside versus bigger wide receivers down the boundary to become a true number one corner elite guy into this league. And he's still bringing that level of physicality, and now he's adding the ability to take the ball away on top of it. You're looking at one of the most impactful defenders in the National Football League. On the number one scoring offense or number one scoring defense in the National Football League for Kansas City Chiefs. So shout out to Trent McDuffie. I feel like we haven't necessarily highlighted him to the extent that he deserves. This game I thought was a great way to look at it. Specifically, given the matchup, he deserved it from this perspective. Go ahead.
We've told this team they needed the one weakness they had dating back to last year was getting turnovers. Like we said, since the Cleveland game, we have 10 turnovers. They're ramping up at the right time, and your best players are the ones that are making plays on the ball. Obviously, Nick Bolton got his hands on some turnovers. Trent is doing his thing. George is playing out of his mind the last 2 weeks, and we've been extremely hard on him, and for right reasons. He was supposed to be our second best pass rusher. Mike Dana has stepped up. Charles Minute, who looks healthy. The guys that we've all been clamoring for to make plays are making the plays when their number is called. That's all we've been asking for all year, and they're doing it at the right times. And Trent is just doing things that's just Trent does. And obviously, we don't call his name much to D-Mac's point, but that's because he doesn't get thrown at as much. And when he does get thrown at, usually like we saw today, it's probably an incompletion. So that's why he's an all-pro for a reason.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no.
It's a very boring job.
No disrespect to the other guys in this league. I respect, all the great corners that, do their jobs in this league and do the tough jobs as far as, being out there on an island by themselves and taking on the number one guy on each team. Trent McDuffie's the best corner in the league. I'm sorry. I'm ready. I'm not going to apologize for it no more. That'll be the last time I apologize for it.
It's not a wild take.
Look, at this point,
it's been him and PS2 all year from Denver. So those are the two guys. So
with the amount of, and then the only reason I would even put him over Surtain is just the versatility of where you can put him in the slot. You can blitz
blitzes,
him,
does everything. Yep.
He comes up and plays in run support. If you
great tackler,
great press man, great in cover and zone coverage. I mean, he's, to me, I don't know how you embody a better corner than that. A guy who can do everything that your guy can do on the other side, plus more. So,
no,
I'm sorry.
And I think Jamar Chase finished with 100 yards versus the Broncos on Saturday. Mm-hmm. When Jamar Chase played us, how many yards did he get? 40?
20. Yeah.
If 40. That. So
40.
Not
to be fair, it was 9 for 37 on or it was 9 for 37. He only had 37 yards on
37. I know he had 37.
But he did have 100 overall.
I mean, they weren't all on Surtain, obviously, but when he played them, that's what happened. When he played us,
and I've continued to say it, and I still think that Patrick Surtain the second is the best cornerback in the National Football League. But I will say Trent McDuffie is the only cornerback that I would want here, specifically for to be used as Spags uses him. And I think that he absolutely is. After you get to Patrick, there's no other corner that I'm taking over Trent. That's just the reality situation. He's been absolutely spectacular. He's elite, and I'm so happy that we're able to get him in the first round, man. Especially given the other corner that went right after him as well, and his struggles in the National Football League to this point. Shout out to Trent McDuffie. He's been spectacular as well. And look, I said it his rookie year when he hadn't put much on tape, and he went up against Jamar Chase. I had never seen Joe Burrow turn down one-on-ones for Jamar Chase versus a corner in the National Football League. I hadn't seen that happen, but it happened when Trent McDuffie got a hold of him in the second half. And I was like, okay, well, this kid's serious, because if there's nobody that's going to respect you on the field as a corner, it's going to be the opposing quarterback. I promise you that. And Trent McDuffie has earned that respect on a consistent basis, and now he's doing it on the outside primarily, and he deserves to be said as one of the best cornerbacks in the National Football League, point blank period. So hats off to you, Trent McDuffie. You earned it, man, and I can't wait to see what you do in the playoffs.
Deuce.
McDuffle, baby.
McDuff.
Duffy bag.
And Mike Duffy.